Hello, I'm Katrina Read and welcome to my channel. I hope you've been enjoying the mini masterclasses to date, and if you have been, don't forget to like and subscribe below so we can keep the content coming. And also, if you're looking to start your journey into painting a bit more seriously but still want to have some fun, then go to the link below and it will take you straight to the Udemy masterclass. This one is a great one because it touches on the fundamentals of painting. It's full of beautiful printables that you can download and work through on your own time. And also, it's a great introduction to botanicals. So check that one out if you want to take a bigger painting journey. Now, this week, if you've been following the classes, you know it's spring here in Australia and we're going to start working with some more flowers. Now, remember the classes last week, we talked about not looking at them as a whole object, but looking at them as different parts, shapes, and how they interact with light. Now, I've chosen sweet peas because they are super easy to paint, and as you can see here, really simple shapes as well. So if you don't have sweet peas in your garden or a bunch of flowers at home with these, don't worry, just choose something very easy to start with that has easy shapes to work with. Now you can see these ones have different tones in them, so it's a really lovely one to work with inks or even watercolors, and this is where we're going to start, and I promise you, you'll be able to do it. It's super easy. Okay, let's begin. We're going to start by just loosely sketching these flowers up. Starting with the shape, you can see here the little veins in it, the different colours from light to dark. And they're pretty simple shapes to draw as well. So remember, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's going to be a little bit freeform. So you guys can see I'm kind of coming at it from the side, but I would normally paint a little bit of a different way to this, but you get the idea. So just start by sketching it up. You might find the shapes are slightly different to what the actual flower is, but that's okay. This is just very loose. And even though our stalk is going to be somewhat thicker, we're actually just going to leave it like that for now, and we'll do it with our brush. Now we're going to take our inks. You can use any brand of ink. Give them a good shake. Even your colours don't have to be exact. You can take a little bit of a liberty with making colours however you choose to have them. So we're just going to use a mixture of brushes. And we might start by putting in our floral stalk first. Just looking for the right size brush. I'm going to use a long tail one for this one. Just move this out of the way a little bit. This is all about just painting the stalk and getting some shapes in there. It's not our final shape.
So just keep working through this flower stalk because it's going to lay down a base for you to anchor the flower petals to. Just take your time with this slowly and just move the brush towards you. The most important thing is having one long fluid line.
Remember, this is a depiction, so we're not, being that we're using inks, we're not doing real life here, we're just doing a representation of it. So it doesn't have to be exactly as it is when you look at it. You can have a little fun with making it into your own as well.
Now you're just going to start to paint in the petals. And you can go back and build up the green areas later just to add a few highlights once that ink is dry. Just keep adding little bits in. All these act as anchor points, and it's very easy to go back and just add tone later. So now we're just going to lay down some water, and this will give you the opportunity to do the shapes of the petals. And also too, I like laying down water because once you put the ink on it, the ink naturally bleeds across the water and it creates a natural gradient. You can move through painting them one by one. Just make sure the first one doesn't dry out first.
Now all those pencil lines will rub out once we're done. We're just going to lay down a base. And we're going to have a look at the colours in there.
So I'm just going to start laying down some colour here. It doesn't have to be exact. The beauty of working with inks and watercolours is that you can go over it a few times to build that depth. And it's just a representation, so even though this looks quite realistic, it doesn't have to be exact. So I'm just going over and working where that water was laid down previously, and you'll see that the bleed of the ink creates that really lovely gradient. It's really important that also you keep working with the water as well as the ink, just so that you don't end up with any sort of harsh lines if the ink dries first. Now, if you put too much ink down, you can actually lift it off by drying out your brush and going back over it again. And that's just a little trick to just keep that gradient in the leaf as well. So you can see it's just slowly building. And I'm just going to keep working over that, all the while making sure my water doesn't dry. Now you're just going to repeat the process the same as you did with the others, and try not to overpaint the areas that are wet because that will bleed into the next petal. So it's important to work around it and leave each section dry, and then you can go back and build over it or adjust any areas you might want to later. Just laying down some water again and repeating the process. You can see that I'm not going too close to the wet area. Ideally, it's good to let the first section dry first, but because we're working in the same colours with the same tones, we can always work over it later as well. You can see here that I haven't really added any white yet. I'm just actually working with the single ink colour. I've toned it a little bit and I'm just working with water just to create a nice tone. So we'll build in some white shortly, but for the moment we're working with one colour. Now I'm just slowly building from the outside to give it some shape. And I've blended some more colours into my original colour. And I'm just going to start building each area just to give it a bit more shape.
Moving that little vase out of the way for a second.
Now I'm going to start adding in some white. And this is just going to lift some highlight spots. Because the base is not dry yet, which is the effect that I want, I just want it to blend really beautifully and with the original base, but start lifting out some highlights as well. And as one section dries, you can keep working and building up previous sections. It's a slow process, but it's a really important stage to follow, just so that you keep getting some tone through each petal. So every time I finish one section, I'm going back and I'm overworking a previous section. And as each layer dries, it gives you the opportunity to go back again and create more tone and depth. The gradients are really important because it's what's giving you that variation in each petal. You can see here I'm starting to get some lovely depth at the top. So I'm just going to keep working through each petal one at a time to separate the ones underneath from the layer at the top. And it's just a building process. One at a time, work with your base and build up in layers. Go back, leave it to dry, do the same thing again. So now, while I'm waiting for the petals to dry, I'm just going to go back and add some highlights to the stalk and the leaves. It's important to do that when the first layer is dry, otherwise it's just going to absorb into the first layer, and that's not what we want. We want to start building it up and creating dimension and looking like we've got some light bouncing off it as well, because that's what's going to separate your painting out from being a flat object on a page to actually having some dimension as well. I also like working with pens and pencils just to create a bit more definition. So if you feel like you want to get a few more highlights in there, these liquid white pens are available in gold and silver as well, so you can have a bit of fun with those, but it just creates a little bit of definition and also some veins on the leaves and the petals. Wait till it's dry though, because otherwise the pen won't work. But if you want to layer it over the top after you've finished all your layering and building, then these are a great tool to have in your toolbox as well. Aside from these pens and pencils, I also love using felt pens and just giving it a bit more definition, particularly if you're doing fine work. These are great just to sort of lift out some extra layers in the stalks of flowers. It's a really delicate process, but the overall look is really beautiful. Now I'm happy with how that's coming along, so I can go back and do a little bit more work on the petals. All this is creating another layer. Think of it like building layer upon layer just to keep getting some dimension in there, and you can really only do that as each layer dries. So take your time, even if you need to have a break from it and come back to it. Just allow those layers the time to dry between and just keep building some tone through it. So reference back to your flowers, really look at the tones and the highlights in those, and just keep trying to work on one section at a time. So remember, we're not looking at this as an overall object. We're looking at it in sections. And when you work in sections, it's actually really easy to replicate and repeat it. And that just allows us to get a lot more definition. Now, I could keep building on this and I may go back and keep working on it. It's important that you get it to a point that you're happy with, step away from it and come back and look at it again and just create a little bit more definition where you feel like it needs it. But other than that, that's the job done.
Well, that's it for me for this week, and I hope you've enjoyed the latest mini masterclass. If you have, don't forget to like and subscribe below so we can keep the content coming. And also, if you're looking to start your painting journey or just get some more tips and tricks, follow that link to take you to the masterclass. Have a great weekend ahead, and I will see you next time. Happy painting.